Welcome back to Observing the Sabbath. I'm Nathaniel Molnar, and we are continuing on through the first studio album from 1970, Black Sabbath. We've done Black Sabbath, we've done The Wizard, we've done Behind the Wall Sleep. Now we are continuing on with Bassically and N.I.B. This is an exciting one, and I just want to read for you guys. I know I say this every video, but I just want to make it abundantly clear to people. This is not me reacting to the songs for the first time. There's a lot of videos like that on YouTube of people listening to Black Sabbath for the first time. I love watching those. I watch a whole bunch of them, and there's a lot of merit in it, and it's fun to watch. But if that's what you're looking for, this isn't quite it. This is somebody who has been a fan of Black Sabbath for a long time, knows the music, has listened to each song hundreds of times. I know it all, so this is me kind of listening to it, commentating and reacting to it, and giving you my thoughts on the song, especially in the contextual nature of the rest of their albums and career. So yeah, so let's get right into it. So this is Bassically / N.I.B. This is where Geezer shines the most on this whole album. I love it. You know, and he's great in the songs, but I mean, it's not really until something like this that you really get to hear Geezer really doing his thing. Bass is one of those more invisible parts of a band where, and I don't come from a huge musical background. I'm not super musically well versed. I just enjoy listening to music. So what I might say might sound incredibly ignorant, forgive me, but I've always kind of thought that bassists, when there's a bass in a band, it's one of those things where you don't really notice it super overtly when band is playing, but when it's gone, you know immediately when it's gone. It's one of the more invisible parts of a band, and I think it can be very easy for people to overlook bassists, because, you know, the vocalist is right there in front of you, the guitarist you hear distinctly, the drums you hear distinctly, but the bass kind of fades into adding the overall atmosphere of the band. And so basses can be rather overlooked, but when they're gone, you notice it. And so it's always great to have a little bit like that where you can really appreciate on its own what a bassist can do. This is a great song. So what's really interesting is that you have two stories of love on this album. And I'm going to be honest, I am not a huge fan of songs that are just about love and all that stuff. There's so many out there. But it's interesting because this one is first. And of course, as we get into the song, we realize that it is Lucifer trying to seduce a person. And then later in the album, we get to Warning, which is a story about love, but it doesn't have that sort of supernatural twist to it. So it's interesting that this one comes first. And I was talking about when we were listening to the first song in this album, Black Sabbath, I was talking about how this, Black Sabbath and N.I.B. are the two songs that really reinforced on this album the idea that this is a satanic band, or this is a sinister or evil band. I never thought about it in those terms, really, myself. And maybe I have the privilege of existing 40 or so years after all this came out, so I wasn't around when this was coming out for the first time. And of course, ideas of religion were very different then and more commonplace than they are now. So it's interesting to look back and think of this album coming out, where they're singing about Satan and God and the devil is coming and Lucifer seducing people, and it's interesting to think about it in the contextual history of when it came out and what people were thinking about it. And so when I hear about, as a legacy part of Black Sabbath, being the evil band or the demonic band or they're Satanists or anything like that, it's interesting because that's not really what they are, or at least what I think of them as. I think part of it is just kind of part of their larger identity, but a lot of that kind of came from this first album and stuck, because you don't really see too much of that. You see, like, even when you get into Paranoid and Master of Reality, there's religious ideas that come up, but it's not really as overtly demonic as it is in this album. I just find that really interesting. They kind of go away from the demonic element of it and focus more on either overtly religious, pro-religious, like After Forever, which I think is a little bit ironic, or just straight up atheistic when you get into like Under the Sun. But it's interesting to see that this is the album that really has the more demonic element of Black Sabbath. The song has such really good rhythm to it. It really does. It's really cool. I just enjoy it a lot. And Tony's riffs in this are just great. Tony is just... Can we just say he's hands down the greatest guitar player of all time? Guitar player, creator of riffs, just overall guitarist. He's just the best there's ever been. In my personal opinion. It's all up for opinion, but... Alright, so that was Bassically / N.I.B. Later, it kind of was dubbed that, N.I.B. stands for Nativity in Black. Black Sabbath has said that, oh, cool, if you want to say that's what it means, cool, but it's more because, I forget which member of the band, but one of them had like a little bit of facial hair that they called N.I.B, like it was the nib on the person's chin, and that's what they named it after. Go figure. But so, some of their song names, some of them make sense for what the songs are, some of them don't as much. I think I like all their song names. I just don't put too much stock in the importance of a name of a song. It's more what the song actually is. And that song's a great one. It's just another continuation, and I love listening to, because I mostly listen to it on Spotify. I mean, I have my record player right there, but I listen to it mostly on Spotify, and Behind the Wall Sleep goes right into Bassically, which goes right into N.I.B. And I broke it up into two parts to do two separate videos, because there's a lot to talk about for the whole thing, and it's like 9 minutes. And I just thought it would be more interesting to break it up into two parts. But I really do like listening to the flow of it, flowing one into another. And I think that's part of, I was talking about before. I was talking about with Behind the Wall Sleep, how they recorded this album in 2 days. One day in the studio to record it, the other day to mix it in the studio. They had 2 studio days. And so they had their live set that they did at shows, and they recorded that. And so when you have 2 songs like Behind the Wall Sleep and N.I.B. that can just flow so easily into each other, I think that part of that is just indicative of the fact that this was constructed to be a live set that they then recorded. And so I love throughout this whole album, and I love listening to on my record player and just hearing the flow through, all the way through the entire album and all the songs, because they all flow really well. So anyways, that's my thoughts on Bassically / N.I.B. Question is, guys, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the song? What are your thoughts on anything that I've been saying about their music and the song and the album or anything? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Once again, I'm Nathaniel Molnar. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more Observing the Sabbath. Stick with it because we are continuing our way through the rest of this album. Next up will be Wicked World. We have a bunch of other things to talk about with this album, so you're not going to want to miss it. So make sure to subscribe. Keep up with the observation. And until our next observation, thank you so much for watching.